So how did you hear about tender funerals?
I first heard about tender funerals in 2016 when I was doing death walker training with Zenith Barago here in Canberra. And I met a young woman, she would have been 21 years old, and her name was Amy. And she was going to become the first funeral director at Tender down in Port Kembla. She was the most incredible person I have ever met, and the more she told me about the Tender model, the more I thought, oh, how good would it be if we had that here in Canberra. And it wasn't until 2018 that the topic came up again, and we were actually invited to start a Tender here in Canberra. Who wants to join? Me!
Resonated most with you?
The part of the Tender story that really resonates with me is the meaningfulness. When you come to Tender, you come into a community that cares deeply. It's not about ticking boxes. It's about finding who you are, what you need, and what your family needs in that situation. It's an absolutely beautiful model. It should be the standard approach, but it's not. So, hence Tender.
What inspired you to join the Tender community?
I was inspired to join the Tender community because of having done the Death Walker training, which I had actually opted to do more so that I could understand death better in preparation for the passing of my own grandmother. And it did help in that, but it also revealed some gaps in funeral care that got me a bit fired up. So I was inspired to join Tender so that I could try and fill those gaps and put humanity back into funeral care.
Fantastic. Who do you think you should share the Tender story with in your community?
The Tender story is for everybody because the Tender way is as unique as every single person. Anyone who comes in the door to Tender is welcomed as they are, in the way they need to be welcomed. If you need a funeral with all the bells and whistles, sure, we can make that happen. If you need it really minimal, we can make that happen. If you need your hand held through the process, that can happen. If you need to take over and do it all yourself, that can happen. And that's just 4 examples of the possible million that could happen. The journey for Canberra it's been up and down. It's been a roller coaster of emotions. At some points you go, oh, we can't do this. Why are we doing this? How can we do this? And then something will happen within our working group and you'll think, yeah, we can totally do this. There's a sense of that, the word community keeps coming up, that sense of community. We are in this together, creating something so meaningful and so necessary that the challenges in finding a literal home, an actual building to put us in, when we hit a wall of, oh, that's not going to work, or we can't manage to meet the requirements there, we get together and we brainstorm it out and we come up with a solution and we henceforth again. So that sense of being a part of a group working together to create something amazing, I love it.
And what do you think that Tender funerals will bring to our community in Canberra?
Tender funerals will bring to Canberra a sense of community and bringing different parts of the community together. People you might not normally get a chance to meet, you'll find them at Tender. You'll discover new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, but you'll also have the opportunity to create a funeral when that time comes within your family, to create a funeral that matters to your family, that helps you move through the grieving process so that you can come to accept the death and then celebrate the life that came before that. My biggest hope for Canberra Tender in the short term is that we get a building and we reach our 150k minimum that we need to raise so that we can make that happen. In the long term, I hope to see more Tenders opening within the Canberra community so that there's different spaces that we can connect, but also seeing Tender popping up across across Australia, and we start changing the narrative within the funeral industry, increasing death literacy. People can then talk with their families about care directives, funeral plans, and then the will, and knowing all of those aspects are understood so that when the time comes, it's less stressful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Catherine. That's all the questions I have for you.
Thank you very much.